Welcome to Beyond the B, an ongoing dialogue about the past, present, and future of the B Corp movement. Co-hosts Emmy Allison and Ryan Honeyman facilitate an open and honest conversation about the B Corp movement, advise companies on how to increase their impact, and provide a deep dive into the new B Corp standards that are shaping our community.
I'm Ryan Honeyman, a partner at Lyft Economy, and my guest today is Maria Emilia Correa. Maria Emilia is a business leader, board director, and distinguished professor at Universidad de los Andes in Colombia. She's a pioneer of the B Corp movement in Latin America. She co-founded Sistema B in 2012 after leading sustainability transformation at large companies like Grupo Nueva and Natura. Today, her work focuses on the next frontier of business, how collective action, governance, and market transformation can enable companies to create lasting value for people, nature, and the economy. She serves on corporate and nonprofit boards and is a frequent international speaker on business as a force for good. Maria Emilia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah, and for listeners, I've known Maria Emilia for, more than 10 years now. She was incredibly kind. I got to visit Santiago in Chile in 2015 for the launch of the Spanish edition of the B Corp handbook, and Maria Emilia hosted me at her house. And so thanks again for generosity back then.
It was a pleasure having you. And I remember that your daughter at the time was only 1 year old. So it's been a whole lifetime.
It's been a whole life.
Now you have 2 children. That's how it's a good way to measure life, right?
Yes. And so, Maria Emilia, I'm wondering if you could just tell listeners a little bit about your background and how you first got into this kind of work, maybe before even the founding of Sistema B. Like, what were you doing in some of your previous work before the founding of that movement?
So I am Colombian. I studied law in Colombia, and then I went for a master's degree in the New School for Social Research in New York on social history and sociology. And when I came back to Colombia, I had the fortune and the privilege that my first professional activity was to work with the Nature Conservancy to start what today is still one of the most significant conservation NGOs in Colombia, called Fundación Natura. So I work in conservation of biological resources, which at the time, because I have a long history. I have 4 grandchildren, so you can calculate the long history of work I have. And at the time, environmental issues, conservation, this was very, very, very new to the agenda. And I had been fascinated with nature all my life. So when I realized that you could work in something that I considered always my hobby, I couldn't feel more happy. I was able to work in what I thought was only, something you did just because you liked. And that was an incredible opportunity. And at the time, we in conservation felt, or I am going to be speaking about myself, I felt that my most important, let's say, enemy in this conservation task was business, because business was the agent that was destroying nature. So my task, I felt at the time, was to stop business at any cost, no matter the cost. We have to stop business. And I worked in that field for almost 10 years. At the Earth Summit in Rio in 1992, I heard for the first time this idea that business is a fundamental actor in building the world we want to live in. Both because business has a significant negative impact that needs to be better managed, but also because business is the actor that can solve problems, innovate, and give solutions at a global level using the market. So the work of business joins in the work of governments and civil society. So that was the first time that I heard that, and it was the work of Mr. Stefan Schmidt-Heine, the Swiss industrialist, And for me, it was a paradigmatic change, understanding that working with business was a fascinating and fundamental opportunity for creating what I've been doing since I started working, which is this idea of a world where we can live together with nature and work with nature for people, for planet, and for the economy. And since 93, I started working with business in many, many different roles, looking like we have been doing, me and many others, for many years on ways to help this fundamental actor of society become also an agent of positive change for the future.
And when did you first hear about the B Corp movement? Do you remember?
Yes, I absolutely. I have the most clear image in my mind because my eldest daughter Maria, she went to Reed College in Portland and for school, and I was like, my first daughter who goes to school and all that. I was helping her buy her whatever cleaners she needed for her, you know, first time living alone in a college far away from her mother. And I was trying to do everything perfect. And I was shopping at the supermarket for cleaners. And all the cleaners at the time were used on opaque packaging, right? You didn't see what you were buying. And all of a sudden, I was walking there, and there was this amazing, transparent, organically shaped bottle with a beautiful blue liquid in it that said, it only said, you don't need gloves to use this product. And it was Method, the company. I fell in love with this company. I always, I always tell that I even forgot what I was doing because I fell in love with the idea of Method and started looking for who these people were. What were they doing? This is, many years ago. They had just become certified B Corporation very early on, 2007, 6. And and I learned about this company, how they were transforming this idea of instead of reducing harm, transforming the industrial proposition of cleaning. It was fascinating. And doing it in a way that I, as a customer, in a very democratic way, could go into any supermarket and buy their product. I fell in love with that idea, and that was the B Corp. And I started looking what they were, and I started bringing this idea of B Corps to the companies I were working with. But then this whole history happened to me in a time when my children were growing up. I was in a point in my life when I say I had like a second adolescence, and I started thinking, what am I doing with my life? Working in the corporate world. And, I remember reading the newspaper and thinking the world is falling apart. And here I am living in a parallel universe. So I decided to leave the corporate world with no plans. I became an entrepreneur, which was a fascinating discovery, the world of entrepreneurship, and had the fortune of meeting my three co-partners in creating Sistema B, Gonzalo, Juan Pablo, Pedro, who for very different ways of life came to the same sort of search in which I was how to do better. What is it that we need to do better to get this promise of business being an actor, the positive actor it can be for society? How can we make it happen? Because uh, at the time I felt we were doing a lot of effort, but our results were peripheral to the most. Right? Little projects, small pilots, but the promise of the possibility of business putting itself to the solution of the problems of the world. The problems of the world are huge. When we talk about climate change, it's the whole world is global. Look at what's happening today in Canada, what's happening in Spain, right? That's huge. So the solutions need to be the same relevance and the same depth of the problems. And that's why business is such a great promise, because business can deliver those solutions. But we're not We were not fulfilling this promise. And I was looking for what is it that we're not doing, that we're doing wrong. So I decided to become an entrepreneur, met my three co-partners who were coming to the same question from different walks of life. And we said, we want to do something for Latin America because Latin America has been our most significant love and our work for the four of us. Then we remember this idea of the B Corps, and you say this idea of a new architecture of governance for business that widens fiduciary duty is probably the most significant way to help business become the promise it can be. So we actually started looking for these three guys who had created the B Corps. With some strange coincidence of life, we ended up having common friends, and we started talking on the phone at the time. And after two conversations, we said, how about bringing this idea to Latin America? Yes, come. And we went to New York and met the three co-founders of B Lab. And we had the most fascinating meeting based on values and commitment. And we became the very best friends in the first 2 hours of our meetings. And we agreed to bring this idea of B Corps to Latin America. But at the time, we said, but you know what? Single companies, no matter how perfect they are never going to be, they are indispensable for what we want to achieve, a better economy, but they're not going to be sufficient. This needs to be a systemic change. We must find ways, obviously, have better business, but also to invite citizens, teachers, investors, politicians to behave differently, to act differently, because that's what's going to add up to a systemic change, which is our dream, an economy that really works for people and for planet. So that's why we created Sistema B in that B Lab in Latin America. It's called Sistema because we are proposing an idea of a systemic change.
I feel like that was a revolution or an evolution of what B Lab was trying to do in the US. It did seem like the US was more focused on like, let's just get mostly companies certified, at least initially. I mean, it was trying to pass the Benefit Corp legislation, but I think Sistema B and your work really helped broaden the lens to all these different actors. Is that true? Do you feel like?
In a way, it is. They had thought about doing something wider of scale than the US and Canada, but they were really very overwhelmed with what they were doing at the time. And I think we had a different theory of change, if I can be a little academic here. At that time, I remember discussions about when this change going to happen? When are we going to have a better economy? When we reach the turning point of a significant numbers of companies who decide to change, and then the sheer number is going to be a new trend in the market, and everyone's going to change with that. Right? That was the theory of change for the B Lab founders. We had a different theory of change. We thought numbers are important, but really, what we need is the systemic action of many to advance business faster, of course, but to advance public policy, to advance, we teach about what business is and how business can be advanced, to deal with investors. The financial sector is fundamental, right? So I think we had different theories of change, but what we agreed upon was that it has to be a global movement, which at the time sounded so, yes, let's have a global movement. I think back I said we were crazy. How can you say that? We were seven people with very little money, just an idea. And it is fascinating to see in 2026 that there are big cores in 120 countries, that this has become a movement in many, many countries around the world, that it has given meaning to many, many people who are working in around this issue of better business, but also better economies, better citizenship, better academia. And this is a movement that has a life of its own and is a wonderful opportunity for all of us who are interested in this topic to advance through action in creating the economy we need.
Tell me about those years when you were more involved with Sistema B, and yeah, what's sort of been your involvement with it, and then we can kind of bring it up to today and talk about some of the bigger picture ideas. But yeah, what was your involvement over the years in like forming it and helping run, you know, in Colombia, etc.
So my first involvement was first through helping Gonzalo Munoz, my partner, who was developing Triciclos, the first certified B corporation in South America, a recycling company. We managed to be, to become B certified. Big challenge, I can say, to anyone who's trying to do it. And I introduced Gonzalo to Pedro from Argentina and to Juan Pablo. So that was my first involvement, let's say, work together with Gonzalo to create the first certified B Corp, and then invite this group of friends. I was friends with the three of them, so I introduced them. Together, the four of us started this idea of bringing the B Corps to Latin America. So that was September in 2011. After our conversation, we came back to Santiago, where I was living at the time in Chile. And Juan Pablo and I, who had more time, we started working together on what to do because we said we had this commitment to bring the idea to Latin America and create a global movement, right? So we started working, and we started in January 2012 with a meeting of friends saying, you know what, we have this idea of a new type of business with a new type of governance to advance a better economy. That's a complicated, not so attractive proposition. It's easier if you think about, I don't know, protecting the endangered species. No, it's an easy thing to transmit. This is economic, it's business. So I wonder if someone is going to be interested. No. So we invited some friends in January 2012 to Santiago, and to our surprise, this meeting was, we couldn't believe it. I mean, we were expecting 20, 30 people, and we ended up with 80 or 90 people from 20 different countries, who everyone paid for their own ticket and hotel and everything. And they came to Santiago to learn what this idea was. The Minister of the Economy in Santiago heard about this idea, and they called us and said, the minister wants to participate. And we were like, okay. you know. And we had to change the agenda if you have a minister of state coming. And then they called us again and said, no, the minister doesn't want to, have a role as a minister. He wants to learn with you. And he came to the meeting and spent all this time with us. And we were all getting there together to, is this proposition, does it make sense? How can we advance this? What should we do? And from there, I think we sort of developed this idea of the complexity of the change that we were thinking about, the need for a systemic perspective, the need for ways to include many people from different avenues of life all through the regions. And we started just inviting people, just expressing these ideas. And it's been a fascinating surprise to see that even such a complex idea, what doesn't sound so, sexy or appealing, has become a very attractive idea for thousands of people, literally around the world.
I agree, and I'm picturing myself in those rooms of just like everyone's excited and talking and these ideas coming out. And so where over those maybe next couple of years, or like where was the momentum? Like where did you find it maybe easier? Like, wow, people are really adopting it. Where was it a little harder? Like was it harder on the policy side, or like yeah, what were you finding success in those early years, and where was it a little harder than you thought?
Well, I think that younger people, the younger generation, students in college level students, were, I think, the first kind of crowd. No, we were seeing hundreds of students coming to visit our little offices we had no money. It was just a very small entrepreneurial idea. And they started coming to us and say, we heard that you're doing this. We want to learn about this type of companies. We're very interested in becoming entrepreneurs for the world. And we started visiting schools and universities, invited by the students. And they were coming by the list, by the tens, by the hundreds. Uh, we didn't have the same interests from the teachers
Hmm.
or the deans of schools. It was interesting to see that schools were not supporting the students so much. They say, yeah, that's interesting, but yeah, this hippie idea, crazy idea. So I think one of the most difficult groups has been schools, but fortunately, the voice of the customers, who's the student, has been strong enough to see a significant change in these years. So that's been, that was one crowd coming to say we're interested, and that was an obstacle on the other side that's been, I think, in many ways, on the point of traditional business. It was very interesting for me as a person who has worked with these topics all my life to find that I had a prejudice because I thought that traditional businesses were not going to be interested in this idea that we bring. And then I realized that I've been meeting so many people who working in traditional large companies are interested in finding new ways to be better citizens, to be better corporations, to bring better for society and for nature. And it's obviously no, we think that no, we are the ones who have the truth. But everyone is interested in climate change. We are all, look at everyone in Europe being subject to these horrible temperatures or these forest fires. Obviously, nobody wants that, right? So whatever we can do to fix that, we will do. So that is something that I learned about myself, that I had this prejudice, that I had to learn to listen and discover the interest and not just enter to business with this idea that I was bringing the light, right? So it was a wonderful surprise to see so many people in large corporations wanting to join. That's been in Latin America a very interesting force. If you see in Colombia, the most important certified big corporations are or large companies that are very well recognized because the people who work in them, the owners, are interested in joining in this kind of activity. And obviously, my third force here would be entrepreneurs. Obviously, people who are innovating, who are looking for new ways to solve business, social, and environmental challenges. And I think they have been the strongest force for the bee movement around the world.
And Colombia has passed the benefit corporation legislation, right? It's possible now. Tell me about that story. Was it easy to get it passed or difficult or?
The law passed in 2018. We had laws being passed in 42 states in the US to create the benefit corporations, in Italy, and then in Colombia. And we started working in Sistema B, through Sistema B in every country we were in Latin America with lawyers, corporate lawyers. Corporate lawyers, I forgot, corporate lawyers, to my surprise. I have to say that that's another prejudice. I thought that lawyers were the most retardatory forces in business. And you see what happens is corporate lawyers are the trusted voice for CEOs. And it's actually a legal duty to listen to legal counsel, right? So if you have corporate lawyers who have this type of credibility and trust in business, speaking a new way about a new way to do business, you have the most direct voice to promote change. So we were working with corporate lawyers. We actually started at that time. We invited 50 lawyers, friends of ours, to Buenos Aires to discuss this idea. This was never sort of a strategically planned endeavor to conquer the world. We just we're exploring and saying, are you interested? Would you like to discuss this? 50 lawyers came, corporate lawyers came to Buenos Aires, and they started supporting this idea of the benefit corporations in Latin America. We have 5 countries, 6 countries, as a matter of fact, passing laws. And in Colombia, we were lucky enough that we have a senator called Ivan Duque, who was fascinated with the idea of B corporations. He had been working in IDB in Washington, and he had learned about the B corporations while working in Washington. So when he came to Colombia as a senator, he really wanted to promote this idea because when he heard about us, he came to us and we said, oh, you're a senator, let's pass this law. So we worked together, and he passed. He was a strong political force to pass the law in Colombia. Obviously, it's obviously a very complex thing to pass a law, but he was really the pioneer in passing the law. We supported in many other ways, of course. And he became the next president of the country.
That's a good ally to have, right?
Very good ally. So big corporations and benefit corporations were a significant part of his public policy activity during his 4 years as president.
And so, part of why we're having this conversation is over the years, the B Corp movement has evolved in Sistema B and also around the world. And we've talked about this on and off, me and you, about, there's been a lot of focus in recent years on standards and the certification process. And you had some good comments to me a while ago and around, maybe we've been too focused on the standards and the certification, and we should look at beyond the standards and really look at the movement and like these sort of positive, amazing things that are happening besides just the standards. Could you speak more to how you've come to that thinking and what you've been seeing around the movement and things like that as you've come to this?
I think that this idea of systemic change with which we started makes a lot of sense today, right? And we have learned in life. I am an old person now, so I can say that I have enough mistakes in my life to have some learnings also, that no individual actor is going to be enough to promote and sustain the change that the world needs, particularly in this period of the 21st century that we're living in, which we see so many changes, so many unexpected and uncertain things happening. Who could have even predicted a pandemic, a global pandemic? It was unbelievable. And we have now war again in Europe, which is absurd, no? So all these changes, this is obviously, we need to recognize that the world has changed and we have to change with the world as well. We cannot keep thinking the same way that we're thinking 20 years ago. This is a different world, we are different people, and we learn, fortunately, because that's what human beings do. And one thing that I learned is that no single variable is enough to promote systemic change. Systemic change has to be pushed from many, many different sides. And nature, I think, is the best teacher. Ecosystemic change is the integration of very diverse actors of systems in nature that explain the robustness of those systems or the vulnerability of those systems where they are not in sync with this diversity working together for a common good. I think that's a great sort of way to think about how we as human beings interdependent with nature, because we are part of nature, and how we are as individuals and as society work. We have this amazing diversity as people, and the robustness of societies should come about by the sum of the difference. And that's what we need to put to the service of change. All right. I hope I'm not being very complex, but what we're talking about today is this need for collective action, for many to work together from many different sides of life, from business, from academia, from government, citizens, working together for common goals. I think that that way of working has more probability that single individuals struggling on our own to find results that are not in our hands to control. So business we've had in these 20 years, this great opportunity to see this fundamental change that a new governance architecture brings through certified B corporations and through B Corps, through benefit corporations, I mean. We see that's the way to go. It's there's a lot of room for improvement, of course, but that makes a lot of sense. It's necessary, but it's probably not sufficient. We need to be more complex in our analysis and to integrate many others. There is no better way to scale a good solution than a good public policy. A good public policy that's implemented in different countries has a potential for scale that no single company on their own is ever going to have, no matter how large a multinational you can be, right? So this idea of finding ways to work with diversity for a common goal through collective action, I think is, for me, the way to think today in 2026. It is the way that sort of a consequence of learning this wonderful adventure that we've learned these 20 years of a new way to do business, a new type of business, right? So I think we have to value what we've learned and put that to the service of new learnings for this new world.
Like one example is the debate that you've seen us get into in the B Corp community is like Nespresso or multinationals or who deserves to have the seal and who doesn't. But that's like kind of the wrong game, you know? And so there's like a more important game we should be watching, which I think you've mentioned. It's things like the changes taking place in classrooms and laws and supply chains and local territories that receive less attention, but are maybe more impactful than like, is Nespresso a B Corp or not? Those kind of things.
I think both are needed. We need better business, of course. We need businesses that are learning how to do it better, to have a better impact and a better, let's say, contribution to economic development and growth. That's a road that's already begun. I think we are working on that side of the equation, which is indispensable. How to do business better, right? And I think it's still a road to be traveled because we don't have yet the perfect solutions. No, we're still learning. And through learning, we're facing new challenges. Like, for example, we're seeing the challenge of scale because we are very much focused on trying to do the best thing to develop company. Yeah, but what happens when companies start scaling significantly and becoming an important actor in the economy? The pressure of the market that is not evaluating the good things they are doing is something that we have to address because we have to overcome this idea that this is a game of heroes and martyrs, of individual companies or individual business people who have to struggle to find their way to try to be perfect. And yeah, of course, we have to each one of us try to be better, but there's a systemic issue here, which is the market. Markets in which we operate are not rewarding the same things that we are working. So we're going to end up finding an obstacle that no matter how much effort we put, how much we struggle, how much we want with our will to do it, the system is not working in the right direction. So individual businesses working to improve what they do, to do better, of course. The way I see is the way of new architecture, governance architecture, both through shareholders agreements, like the certified B corporations, or through laws, like the benefit corporations, that allow shareholders to define a different fiduciary duty, right? So I think those tools are key, and we need to work on that. We also need to work on the systemic environment where these companies operate. So I understand the discussion whether the B corporation should be a role model for others to follow. which I agree is important. But I cannot believe that anyone is perfect. And I'd rather work with people who want to improve, to be better, than expect everyone to be at such level of perfection that is kind of, in my view, not easy to achieve, right? I am more on the side of let's work with anyone who wants to change, no matter how far you are, because I think that's where the better solutions come from. And we need scale. That's the other challenge we have. We need scale. The problems are huge. Inequality is huge. Discrimination is huge. Climate change is all this. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of hectares of people, of CO2 tons. Our solutions need to have the same relevance and scale. So how do we reach scale? That's the question underneath my concern. How do we reach scale to allow business to become the promise it can be? Architecture, governance architecture, of course, fundamental. But now we need to think differently about the rules of the market and invite as many other actors who can join in this quest as we can. The scale that you have through academia is amazing. When you have many, many teachers. Now we have the Global B Academics Organization that has been supporting many teachers and researchers around the world. Imagine thousands of teachers reaching every quarter or every semester 30, 40, 50, 60 students learning about how to do business. The scale is huge. And what happens when millions of people start going into business or entrepreneurship with a different perspective of how they can do business? It's huge. The scale is big. Same happens with public policy. Imagine good public policies where the UN and other multilateral organizations can help become the channel for these public policies to be implemented around the world. No single company ever is going to have that kind of impact. So I want to see scale. I want to see changes in reality. And I'm ready to be open to new ideas better than I can think of. I want to learn from many. And I think collective action is the way to go. So my focus, my personal focus is on scale. That scale has to be built upon, obviously, with businesses that are doing better. But I don't want to focus my time in perfecting everything. I want to focus my time and my effort and whatever I can do in helping ways to find actions of scale.
I think what folks may be feeling, I mean, there's a few things going on, I imagine. One is like human beings are wired to see sometimes the outlier, it's part of our lizard brain of like, oh, Nespresso, like bad. And so there's like a triggering thing for just humans. So I think there's like, it's one of the reasons why climate change is hard to get people excited about, right? It's, or to address it. It's sort of there, but it's happening, but it's not immediate, right? So I think there's a little bit of a challenge with the systemic action and the change in the classrooms and the laws and things, I feel like could benefit from, and maybe there already are good storytellers or like stories or highlights or things like that, but it's like making those more tangible and like that people can see the progress. Because I think the fear that people feel when they say, if someone were to say, yes, we want scale, we want systemic change, but there's also, I think there's a fear of like, well, is that enough? Like, is it actually going to make a difference? Right? Is what everyone's doing actually not going to create this world we want? Is it? So maybe there's like a fear reaction of like the slow progress of business. So I'm not sure how you think about those.
So I think life is complex and we cannot be afraid of complexity. You see? I don't think we have simple answers. I wish we had simple answers. I would love to have simple answers. Life is complex. We are complex. The change we need is complex, right? And I have this, when I started working, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, I started working many years ago on issues related to conservation. I never dreamed that we would have a market like we have today. with so many companies operating, offering products with social and environmental consideration, with so many customers around the world buying those products, with investors. So I have seen that change that I never thought was going to happen. It just takes time, a good idea. And the trust in people. I think we need to trust collective intelligence. So first, I think it's a message of love complexity because we have to live with it, and uh, and trust that if we keep doing the right things, time is going to work on the right direction, right? Let me give you my idea, my view on Nespresso, for example. When Nespresso started becoming a certified B Corporation, I received as a customer in living in Chile, in the middle of Chile, imagine the southern cone, a message saying, we are becoming a big corporation. We want you to know we are open to your conversation, to your ideas. And that same message was received by millions and millions of customers around the world. That's scale, right? That opened this, that it's a totally different way of doing business. It's a company calling me as a customer saying, listen, we're doing this. If you want to join, we're open. We want to hear your ideas. Let us tell you what we're doing to improve and what we know are things that we need to improve. Everyone knows that we have this problem with pots. We're trying our best to find a way. If you find a way to solve it, come. We're looking for it. So becoming a certified B corporation, I think we've always said, is not perfection. It's the beginning of the road to better business. So what is it that I value very much? It's a company who seriously is investing and working towards improvement, that has this scale and this reach and this possibility of working with so many producers of coffee all around the world to hopefully improving the way they buy coffee. I'm very particular about coffee suppliers receiving a very little of the value, and they're working on that and exposing themselves through transparency to public questioning. I think is the best way for all of us to become citizens involved. We're invited. We can see what this company is doing. We can participate in offering ideas to improve. And certainly doing it at that scale for me is fascinating. That doesn't mean that I don't care about the problems. Obviously, I care about the problems. I want solutions for the problems, and I want them faster, of course. For many years, I worked on the side of criticizing people because they were not doing what I thought what needed to be done. And I don't think that negative questioning helps develop a positive way for people to act towards change. I think it creates resentment. It creates a negative attitude towards social and environmental issues. I think that you advance much better and faster through enthusiasm than through criticism. Now you have a 12-year-old daughter. Think about it. How do you educate a preteen, right? Obviously, you'll probably do much better giving clear rules, of course, but also helping her be a better person. And I think that's how human beings are. So in my old age, I'd rather work with enthusiasm than criticism. I don't know if that kind of answers
That's
your
great.
concern.
And one of the things that stands out, have you heard of this book, Incorruptible by Eric Ries?
Wonderful. I started reading it a couple of days ago. Oh, I'm fascinated. Fascinated. Amazing. Amazing. And he's exactly touching this topic that I was talking about the scale of benefit corporations, as you call it in the US, public benefit corporations, like OpenAI and all that. And he's dealing with the problem that we are seeing in the world today. It's fascinating. How do we deal with this intention to be better that faces the challenges of a market that is oriented towards a different, let's say, goal? I have not read the whole thing, but what I've been reading up to now, I find it great. And it comes from an entrepreneur in the tech business. Perfect. Amazing.
I think what I get excited about with his book is it makes clear, and we've seen it now, there's been enough benefit corporations who have gone public, unfortunately with like Allbirds and, and others, where benefit corporation is better than not. And he's advocating for even more additional ways to protect the mission, like the trust, like with Tony's Chocolonely has the Mission Guardians, or Patagonia has their Purpose Trust. And so I'm hopeful that what the B Corp movement can do, and mission-driven business to reach that scale, is do the benefit corporation as the step one, like every company should be a benefit corporation. And then there's also knowing that there's additional protections we can put in to separate, to sort of protect the mission beyond just the benefit corp legal structure. Like, for example, separating the mission and purpose decision-making from the financial, like there's just separated governance. And so it sort of gets to this question of why you've seen corporate players be better than you thought. And then, how we also can ensure that they have the protections to make decisions that are durable as well. And so curious for your thoughts.
One of the paragraphs that I loved in that book is, I don't recall the exact words, but he was saying something like, it's the systemic organization that is a challenge, because people really want to do the right thing. These are my words, not Rice's words, but that's kind of the meaning. So I don't think we have to do everything that you mentioned, and we have to find a way. We don't yet have a clear solution, an only path. And I don't think we'll find an only path, because companies are very different, situations are very different. So it's wonderful that we have many companies trying out different things, but Patagonia is doing something, and the others are doing something. And we have to help everyone try out the ways to go. So I support diversity in solution, because it's better to open up to collective intelligence than try to get one single tool and commit yourself to that tool no matter what, because it's going to be probably a good tool, but probably many others can be also good too. So, but I think that the question in the end is going to be what James Perry is calling how to tame our wildest animals, right? Which is human beings. We can be good, as I've said, to me has been a wonderful acknowledgement. How interesting can business people be? Can all be, but also what happens when the system is organized in a way that pushes us to do things that are not good for the planet and the people. So that's why I say, I've seen people in business making decisions that are so not in agreement with their values, but they feel that they have either, for many, many reasons, they have to take those decisions, right? So how can we help that not happening? What can we do, right? And I have a fundamental belief in the good faith of people. So how can we support good faith? Also, I'm not innocent. There are a lot of things that are wrong, and there are people who are wanting to do the wrong things. But for those people, I think that's what the law is for, and that's why but that's another avenue, People who are wanting to be not ethical are going to find a way to be not ethical, no matter how many beautiful tools we offer them. So people who are doing the wrong thing, they should be treated as, as wrongdoers, right? With hopefully the law and the legal system and democracy really acting to protect us, right? And so that's one avenue of work, which I'm not part of. I am part of the people who are acting in good faith and trying to do their best. And I think that there's so much room to innovate, to create, to solve, that instead of focusing on, not instead of focusing, we obviously have to understand where the problems are and try to solve them. And when there is no good faith, that has to be dealt with through law, hopefully. No, I don't think that we have to hit ourselves on the head or fight, take the law in our hands. I think bad faith has to be managed with the law, with process, institutional process. For the rest is the world of innovation, creation, possibility, what to do better.
Talked about a lot of things in this interview so far, and I'm curious, is there anything of the points that we spoke about that you feel like we haven't touched on related to the B Corp movement or these broader pieces? Anything else that you wanted to make, points you wanted to make?
So I am really very enthusiastic about this idea of collective action being part of the new standards, of the certified big corporations new standards. And because that's going to bring this idea to how to companies to start thinking about how to do it and trying out and learning how to do it, because nobody has the final answer on how collective action is done. So I think that business is going to put it test and to work, and that's a great opportunity. But it's also a great opportunity for all of us who are working in this field, on this area, with this common interest, to learn that we are not alone, that there are many other people around the world who share this interest, and that we can join forces with many. And that I think in this time, 2026, when we see how the world is changing, how governments are and politics are in many ways frustrating many of us in certain areas and so on. I think that reinforces the power of business, the power of citizens, the power of all of us who can act outside of business, outside of of politics and government, to become actors, to be part of the solution for the problems of the world. So I really look forward to particularly B Lab, because I'm interested in B Lab when I work with B Lab people, but this idea of collective action becoming an activity for businesses who are certified, but also for all of us to join forces with many and learn how to work with people who think different, who are diverse, who probably we don't necessarily agree or trust them or anything, but we can still find ways to collaborate because we have a common goal. So I think that the democratic challenge that we face as a world and as countries is this possibility of us working together with people with that we don't agree with, that we don't trust, that we don't like, without having to use violence or force or aggression. Right? You can think whatever you want to think. I can think whatever I want to think. I don't need to hit you on the head because I need to convince you of thinking differently. But we can work together, thinking differently, and reach common goals that are good for all of us. So I think that this collective action is, I think, the most, after joining in the importance of a business governance architecture that includes nature and people in the fiduciary duty, this idea that we can work together with many to create systemic change for a new economy, I think is an opportunity that is fascinating, that is attractive, that is going to open up a new whole set of opportunities for many. So I would like to, if I can say something that I would like to leave in the minds of people who are listening here, is this wonderful privilege and opportunity that we all have to join with many who think different. We don't have to be in agreement. What we have to be is able to work together, to collaborate, to create this economy that has this power, this immense power to deliver a better world, right? And we can be actors of that change. And that's the opportunity we have. And I would just like find to see many people excited about this.
I love it. And what's next for you? Anything exciting for you in the next 6 to 12 months that you're going to be working on?
My focus for the last few years has been small and medium-sized companies, because I think we focus a lot on large companies like, this debate, Nespresso, non Nespresso, Unilever, or not Unilever, those are fascinating debates. But most of the economies around the world are comprised by small and medium-sized companies that are, by the way, the source of labor in the world, right? And the source of innovation in many times. I think there's scale in small and medium-sized companies around the world. And I think there's a potential that is fascinating. So I've been talking to small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and business owners in Latin America for the last 5 years, working with them in many ways. And I've been so happy to find so many people that without the technical words, without the university knowledge, without the technical expertise that maybe we can have here, are working through their business to be a better actors for their communities. And I think that's a very clear um, um, and enthusiastic possibility for many business owners. Seeing it in Latin America, I'm seeing it in Colombia, and I know we'll see it in the world. So I find scale there. I find purpose. I find enthusiasm. I think that's what I've been doing for the last years and what I plan to keep on doing for the next few years. Working with small and medium-sized business that who want to be better actors, right? I don't want to people come, I'm an Emilia because you're in sustainability. Come and try and help me try to convince this person to do whatever. I don't want to convince anyone. I want to work with people who are looking for ways to be better citizens through business. I think there are enough of us that I don't need to go out and try to convince someone who's not interested. Those who are not interested are going to end up finding the market is going to bring them here. And some are never going to be interested. Okay, you know, we have to live with those who are on the other side. Okay. But I find that building on the enthusiasm of many, we have a possibility to reach faster the goals that we want.
Well, Maria Emilia, it's always a pleasure to reconnect. And I'm glad we got to chat about this and inspire folks and listeners to sort of take that next step towards collective action. So really appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to seeing what's next for you and definitely in Sistema B as well.
Thank you so much. And of course, we will be involved. What do you think? You will be involved in whatever comes next. We'll keep meeting. So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and to join your podcast, the Beyond B podcast. I've been following you since you started. And I think this is probably one of the few spaces around the world where we can have these kinds of conversations seriously with different views, of course, which is great, and where we are creating a new thinking and a new way to act. So thank you for doing this podcast and thank you for having me here. I've been following these conversations with great interest, and I see the power that we can have in people who would like to discuss these things with seriousness and commitment and enthusiasm. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Beyond the B listeners. If you're looking for even more inspiring conversations with leaders on the front lines of our movement towards just futures, be sure to subscribe to Next Economy Now, produced by the team at Lift Economy. Next Economy Now broadens the focus beyond the B Corp movement to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, democratic, equitable, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. Check out our latest episodes at lifteconomy.com/podcast. You can subscribe to Next Economy Now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.